Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to their local beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're most definitely best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and they've been one of the real pioneer breweries in their home state in that particular style category. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong. It's a style that I've had from them quite a few times before, one that I know they can do very, very well, and I've heard very good things about this particular beer as well. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to America like I said. We are going to go to the New England region in the northeast of the country, the state of New Hampshire, and then a little town in the kind of southeast of the state called Nashua. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Spyglass Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Hello World. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this is another New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is one of 3 beers that I bought from the latest batch of Spyglass beers that made it here to Hong Kong. And this one has quite an interesting hop profile to it, and I was really curious to see how that would turn out. But the other thing that caught my eye with this one was just the name Hello World. If you've ever done any programming in any language, the Hello World thing is pretty much the first thing that you will learn. You know, get the program to give you back a little message saying Hello World. So that was one of the reasons why I quite liked this one as well. But yeah, always nice to return to these guys. We've always had some solid IPAs from them. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Spyglass Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future too, because there's beers are coming in very regularly, and I do have one more from this latest batch to look at too. But yeah, there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because we do get some very good beers from the US here in Hong Kong, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Spyglass Brewing Company quickly then. So Spyglass Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Nashua in New Hampshire, which is in the southeastern part of the state, but it's a little bit to the northwest of Boston, which is probably the most kind of well-known city in the area for those of us who aren't from there, of course. But this company was founded back in 2018. So the 4 men behind the brewery are John Wagner, Joe Kidder, Jonas Johansson, and Avi Subramaniam, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I am. But all of these guys had a background in IT, which also makes sense when it comes to the name of this beer, and they were really into the hazy IPA scene, and apparently they used to travel around the New England region together, visiting different breweries, but they became quite frustrated that they couldn't find these same New England hazy IPAs in their home state of New Hampshire. It just really wasn't that easy for them. But John was also a home brewer, and this prompted the group to look at opening up their own brewery. So they opened up a small 45-seat space in the Townsend West area of Nashua, quite close to the airport, and they soon built up a very good reputation for themselves. But over the years, they expanded their capacity 3 times, but it proved to just not be enough, and so they had to find a new location and move. So a few years later, in 2022, they moved the production to a larger space on Innovative Way in the south of the city, and they've got an on-site tap room and restaurant there which can seat 300, and this opened in early 2023. So Isaac Boucher was also brought in as the production manager and head brewer, and they've been continuing to develop new recipes and expand their sales over the last few years. And like I say, these guys have become very, very well regarded in New Hampshire and further afield. These guys are the first big brewery from New Hampshire that I certainly came across. In other places, in Copenhagen, we always had a good selection of American beers, and these guys were certainly the first from New Hampshire that I saw there. But yeah, like I say, these guys have got a very good reputation, particularly for the New England Hazy IPAs, and as of March 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 295 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Spyglass Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's that. Let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see it's kind of in the sort of DOS setup there. You can see the kind of black console background and the DOS code there, like command prompt. It kind of reminds me of this one. You can see plain silver top on the can there. This one is a 473 milliliter can, incidentally, which is one North American pint, I guess we should say, because the Canadians use this measurement as well. But like I said, this one comes in at 8.5% ABV. I was trying to figure out what programming language it is that's in this one, but I really don't recognise it, in all honesty. But yeah, the hops in this one, incidentally, are Citra, Chinook and Strata, all of which we know quite well, but I've never had them in a combination together, as far as I know. But yeah, Citra, all 3 of them are American, of course. Citra is 14% alpha acid, it gives you that lovely big sort of mango kind of character, a little bit of peach as well usually, and then a kind of lemon limey note when you use it in a New England IPA. Chinook is of course one of the classic, more well, Citra's an old school sea hop as well, but Chinook is known for its kind of pine resiny characters, 14% alpha acid once again, and it can give you quite a wee bit of grapefruit. Strata is a slightly newer hop, I want to say 16% alpha acid with that, and it's known for its kind of melony but very juicy strawberry characters which dominate as well. So yeah, I've not had Strata in a wee while, and that was one of the main reasons that I was attracted to this particular beer as well, and the combination of Strata and Chinook actually. So yeah, that I think is everything we need to say about the beer. 8.5% ABV. I think this one is a slight touch heavier than the last one we reviewed, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, let's get it out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I always enjoy the Spyglass beers when I get the chance to drink them, so I'm hoping this one will be no different. So let's do it and see what we have. I have to say, that looks pretty damn nice. So yeah, slightly bigger head on this one, incidentally. But yeah, you can see this beer has poured with about 1.5 fingers of a frothy, I would say perfect white head there, but you can see it's quite soapy. I think we've got about 75% of the beer out and into the glass, right enough. But yeah, I'll just let you have a wee look at the head on that one there. You can see it's a little bit kind of bumpy and soapy there. I don't think I poured it overly aggressively or anything like that, but yeah, looks pretty nice. In terms of colour then, this one I would say is quite a bright yellow mango juice colour. I always like comparing the appearance of New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that really is just what they remind me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but that can vary from, or you don't really have to care about that actually when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, unless you're talking about fruit IPAs and stuff like that. But yeah, the other thing I would say about this one is that for a New England hazy IPA, let me just shift the light over a wee bit. For a New England hazy IPA, this one certainly isn't the soupiest and gloopiest I've come across in the category. It's actually got, I feel, a little bit of transparency, but yeah, there might be a little touch of sediment in this one, we should say, so we'll see about that when we pour the rest of it. But remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use, and that can vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery and things. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, but yeah, all in all, in terms of appearance and what you would expect from that because of the style and things, this one really doesn't have anything untoward about it. This is pretty much what you would expect from a New England hazy, but not the soupiest and gloopiest example I've seen. I think that sums it up pretty nicely. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the appearance section of the video, and we can go on and have a little look at the aroma then. So let's do that. This should be quite nice. Ooh, all right. Actually a very soft aroma, in all honesty, and if I sugar it up, yeah, quite a soft aroma, this one, and quite juicy, but also kind of slightly zesty on its grassy characteristics as well. So yeah, I quite like that about it, I have to say that. Wasn't quite expecting it to be so soft in a way, but when you sugar it up, you do get a wee bit more pungency out of it. That's interesting. But yeah, getting quite a bit of melon out of this one, incidentally, and quite a wee bit of the lemon. Oh, well, I don't know. You get the strawberry, the melon, the Strata's quite a pungent hop, I think, generally, and that sticks out in this one. But you get a nice mix of like floral and grassy zestiness underneath it. But yeah, when it comes to IPAs, or the hazy IPAs, for me there are 6 ways or 6 elements you should think about with the aroma of these beers. So you've got the kind of the sort of farmhousey, yeasty type character out of this one, or in them, which is more, yeah, the farmhousey, yeasty character and the rye and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in the New England brewed New England IPAs because the style started out as the farmhouse IPA, but as the style has evolved, the focus has been more on barley malt bread, wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of things. For me, this one actually has a little bit of the yeastiness to it, good little bit of barley malt bread, and then it's the kind of wheaty character that comes out of this. And you have to remember that North American wheat is a little bit kind of smoother, if you like, than European wheat, which I find a little bit more bitey. So I think this one is more kind of barley malt bread and wheaty white bready leaning, I would say. So yeah, the aroma of this one goes together really, really nicely. So yeah, the backbone of the beer then, you've got a lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust to this one, as you always get. There's a little bit of wood in there, a little bit of cracker, of course. I'm getting a wee touch of the kind of wholemeal brown bread that you sometimes get, but not overly much. It's a big fluffy, yeah, it's a big fluffy big fluffy white bready character that I'm getting out of this one for the most part. So yeah, big fluffy fresh white bread in there, and then on top of that you start to smell the wheat. So the wheat does have a little bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but for the most part it's actually a very kind of dense and smooth white bready character that's coming out of it. So yeah, lovely dense wheaty white bready character in there. On top of that, you can smell the oats, the oaty character that's in this one's quite interesting as well. American oats for me tend to be a little bit more kind of porridgey than the sort of usual creaminess that you get from European oats. So the American oats are a wee bit drier, and the more that your nose adjusts to this beer and kind of gets over the sort of strata pungency that the beer has, because there's a hell of a lot of melon in this beer actually. But yeah, the oaty character in this one, you can smell that little bit of creaminess to it, and there's also that nice little bit of dry oaty character as well. So that I really do quite like. Yeah, for me, there's a little bit of sweetness coming out of this one too. There's a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch and a wee bit of the McVitie's digestive biscuit. These are common things that you'll find in these beers, especially when you get up to about the 8% mark, of course. But yeah, those the sweetness that comes out of this one is not overpowering, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I was filming this one when I'm a wee bit tired, so my brain is a little bit sleepy when I'm making this video. But yeah, the sweetness element in this one really is not too overpowering. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, just a little bit of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch and a little bit of the biscuit there. I think at that we've covered everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. So let's have a wee quick look at the yeastiness then. So the yeastiness comes out of the back of the nose, of course, and I'm finding that quite interesting, to be honest, because it's got a little bit of a sweet brown bready, it's got a little bit of a sweeter brown bready character to it as well, but at the same time there's a bit of a fresher white bread, and it's almost just got a little bit of a farmhousey sourdough bready character to it as well. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of things in this beer does go together quite well. But yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about that. So let's move on then and have a wee look at the hoppy side of the beer. So as I've said in many an IPA review on the channel before, there are three types of hoppings that you can do with your IPAs. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of your wort boil. That gives you pretty much most of your bitterness, but a very deep dank green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour of the wort boil. A little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour aroma, but it gives you a very bright green component for the most part. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour. That's all about flavour and aroma. And yeah, again, it gives you a very bright green component. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're softer and juicy. West Coast IPAs tend to use all three, which is why they're deeper, danker, and more kind of oily, if you like. So yeah, that goes together quite nicely in this one. You can smell that this one has had a wee bit of early addition hopping just because of how deep and dank it is. But I think that's also Chinook. I think Chinook is probably the one that's being used as the early addition hop in this particular beer. But yeah, you do get a little tiny bit of earthiness out of this one and a wee bit of woodiness to the green component. But yeah, you've got a lovely little bit of pine resin just underpinning it all, but lots of floral aromaticity, a little bit spicy, and then yeah, you've got that kind of nice grassy zestiness coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think is really quite nice. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff from the green component. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of things then, just to round off the aroma of this particular beer. Let's do that. So yeah, for me, as I said, the strata kind of dominates the aroma here, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does the same with the flavour. But yeah, I do get a little bit of the peach from the Citra in this one, but yeah, there's a hell of a lot of mango in there, and I think there's a lot of the melon kind of underpins that, so you're getting the peachy sharpness and the melon pungency, but lots of nice juicy mango-y characters in there. There's a wee bit of apricot and stuff as well. But yeah, when you take the aroma in more deeply, you start to get that nice oily, juicy strawberry kind of note out of this one. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think is really very, very nice. So yeah, I like that about this one. It's a really interesting aroma, and I think this one, from what I remember, was the best rated on Untappd out of all the Spyglass ones that arrived this time. So yeah, I think this should be pretty damn good. So let's just see if we can get a little bit more of this into the glass, and I'll put the rest in just a wee second. But as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience with craft beers, but I think it's about time to try this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Hello World, an 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Spyglass Brewing Company in Nashua, New Hampshire, over in the US. My brain really is dead when I'm making this video, but let's do this. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's nice. Actually, a very, you can see a little bit of the sediment going. There's a few particles with this one, but yeah, this is quite an interesting one actually, because as you would expect from Spyglass, it's very, a lot of the Spyglass beers in my mind always tend to be quite soft and kind of oaty leaning, or kind of barley malt bready leaning, and this one does have it does have that kind of character to it for sure, but it's yeah, it does have that kind of character to it as well, but it's, how would we say, it's certainly it strikes me as being a little bit more, just a little bit more dry almost than the other ones. So yeah, some of the other ones I've had from Spyglass have been really big and thick and creamy. This one's just a bit softer and a wee bit drier, a bit more barley malt leaning, dare I say. But again, it's as always from Spyglass Brewing, this one's a pretty damn nice beer. It's got a lovely juiciness to it as well, actually. I have to admit, from the aroma, I was expecting something a bit more kind of punchy and a bit more. I thought it was going to be a bit more kind of piney and zesty and stuff, but yeah, it's very, very soft and juicy. So this is one of these ones where it kind of diverges from its aroma a little bit, in all honesty. So yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, let's just break the flavour down then and describe it for you more in depth as we always do. So we'll start on the middle third of the palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a wee touch of woodiness out of this one. So yeah, there's that little bit of woody character to it, and on top of that you get there is quite a little bit of kind of Jacob's cream cracker to this one. So yeah, the white bready bread crust, the woodiness in there, the Jacob's cream cracker, and then above that you start to get the above that you start to get the kind of brown bready characteristics. So yeah. Yeah, so there's a nice kind of wholemeal, brown bready layer coming out of this one. So you can feel that a little bit more into the aftertaste as well, because it actually does develop a wee bit of sweetness. So you get this kind of crackery and brown bready dryness, but as I say, it does develop that little bit of sweetness. Then you have, then above that you've got a layer of you have a layer of a more kind of fluffy white bready character in there, and even the white bread has a little touch of sweetness to it actually. And then you have a more dense layer of wheaty white bread. It's actually very, very smooth. It gives you a little touch of bitiness at the back of that middle third of your palate, but overall it is very, very smooth actually. And then you have the oaty notes just sitting on top of that. Yeah, so the oaty side of this beer is quite interesting, because yeah, down the middle line of your tongue you can really feel some of the oaty kind of creaminess in there. but as you move out toward the edges of the palate, you do get a little touch of the dryness out of the oats. And as I've often said, oats can be a decent rough indicator of how fresh your beer is, because essentially the fresher your New England IPA is, the creamier the oats are, the drier they are, the older it is, and that's in terms of flavour and aroma. This beer, I wonder with the little bit of sediment and things that are in it, if this one is slightly older than the last one we reviewed. And of course, I think it's been about a week between filming the two, right enough. But still, yeah, this one I do wonder if it is just that little bit older, because there was quite a few came across in the shipment. But yeah, that's an interesting point to make. You do get more and more of the dry side of the oats into the aftertaste, but in the dead centre of your palate you get that little circle there where the Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy elements come out. That is of course the boozy side of the beer, and just around that you've got a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type character coming out of it as well. So yeah, that's interesting there, but I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate this one. But definitely a more kind of barley malt, bread and crackery leaning beer, this one, I have to say that. So yeah, in terms of the malty side of things then, or the middle third of your palate, I think that covers everything. But let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But between the middle and back third of your palate, you tend to get similar flavours, just at different intensity. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffy white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bread on top. The base of that back third of your palate, you've got a really nice little bit of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You've got the Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that. The brown bready layer feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy, wee touch drier. Then the white bready layer, the barley malt white bready layer above that feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy and a wee bit drier. Then yeah, you've got a more dense wheaty white bready character coming out of this one too. So yeah, the wheaty notes are a little bit more kind of bitey and things too, and then above that you've got all the yeasty notes coming out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the yeasty side of this one then, to round off the middle and back third of our palate, the malty yeasty side of the beer. So yeah, for me, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is pretty nice, but it gets sweeter and drier into the aftertaste. But yeah, the yeasty side of this beer then, at its core, it feels like it's a kind of sweet brown bready type character, and then round the edge, it's more like a kind of oaty, farmhousey, bready sort of thing that's going on. And the very edge of it is like a kind of bread crust. Yeah, it's kind of like a sort of bread crusty type character that comes out of this one, more than anything else. So quite an interesting yeasty component to this one. I wonder if these guys have their own yeasts that they're developing, but this beer actually in a sense reminds me of, this one's actually a little bit more like a kind of farmhousey IPA in honesty. This reminds me of the likes of Heady Topper, the Alchemist beers that I first tried, and the kind of more yeasty vibe that they had. This one really is a bit more like that in comparison to some of the other Spyglass ones, which I think have been a bit more oaty and kind of wheaty leaning. They've just been a bit bigger in terms of the malty side of things. I think this one is actually leaning more toward the yeasty end of the spectrum within the New England IPAs. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I really like that about this. It's just a wee bit different, but definitely yeah, back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. Your green component in this one is fairly straightforward. In the back corners of your palate you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, there's a little bit of a kind of woody type character to this one as well, a wee bit of pine resiny note underneath, and then yeah, you've got some nice floral aromaticity and a wee bit of spiciness to it. But yeah, round the front curve of your tongue, it's a wee bit more kind of zesty and soft grassy, I would say, but the green component in this one is a little bit more oily rather than anything else. But yeah, I do like that about it, that's for sure. Yeah, so for me, the I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. But let's go and have a little look at the front third of your palette then. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palette, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on the top. But the base of that front third of your palette, it's got a little bit more, yeah, you can feel the bread crust underneath, the cracker, and I think those linger there into the aftertaste, the brown bread, the white bread, then the smoother wheaty sort of note coming out of this one. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the fruity side of things then and round off the tasting. So yeah, the Chinook for me it's interesting in this one because I would have expected a little bit of grapefruit pungency out of the fruitiness, but you really don't get that actually. I feel at the back of that oily bubble, I don't even really get a kind of peachy note. I get a lot of melon and a bit of juicy mango sitting on top of it, and as you move further forward to the middle of that front third of your palette, there's like a bit of soft apricot and maybe a wee bit of pineapple. And then yeah, as you move into the front half of the front third of your palette, it's all about the kind of juicy strawberry from the strata, and the strata really I think kind of dominates this one a wee bit. I'd love to see the brew sheet and see exactly what they've done with the hops in this one, the ratio and so on, and the timings of the additions. But yeah, the melon and the strawberry really shine through in this one. You do get a bit of the juicy mango and the apricot and stuff, like I said, and there's maybe just behind the very front tip of your tongue, there's maybe just a little bit of a limey character in there, which will be the citra, of course. But yeah, it's a very juicy and soft beer from the fruity perspective, I would say, and that's something that I can appreciate about it as well. But I think at this point, we've said everything we really need to about the flavour of the beer. It's quite an interesting one. There's quite a farmhousey IPA, but quite melony and quite strawberry, with just a little bit of tropical character to it as well, but it's drier into the aftertaste. So yeah, it's something a wee bit different from Spyglass Brewing, and that's what you want. I like that, where breweries can show you the different ways that a beer style can lean. We used to have this with the likes of Apex in Sweden with all the New England hazies that they did. So yeah, interesting stuff, that's for sure. So let's round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. For me, this beer is I'd say this one's kind of mid-bodied to top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation's quite smooth. You do get a bit more dryness out of this beer into the aftertaste. Like I said, it feels quite smooth rather than anything else. IBU wise, I think the bitterness in this one does build up. You can feel some of that Chinooky pine resin coming out of it later, so for that reason I would be tempted to say this is 40 IBUs rather than the standard 30. The malt base, the underlying part of it, there's a nice little bit of kind of graininess underneath this one, so you've got that wee bit of dryness in there, the smoothness in the middle, and a kind of dry sweetness on top. Covered the hoppy character already, and you've got the nice fruity character coming out of this one as well. As I say, quite soft melon and strawberry, and just a wee bit of a tropical note and some limey zestiness into the aftertaste. But all in all, an interesting beer, this one, and quite different to what I've had from Spyglass Brewing before in terms of the New England IPA style category. So let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Hello World, an 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Spyglass Brewing Company in Nashua, New Hampshire, in New England in the US. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Spyglass Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.